Welcome to episode 4 of the Always On podcast series, recorded at Carousel's Executive Briefing Center here at Carousel headquarters. I'm your host, Jason Albuquerque, Carousel CIO and CISO. Today we're going to cover securing the remote workforce. We're going to take a deep dive into securing our remote workforce, the struggles that organizations are having with the shift, solutions that are on the market today, and really the future of what securing this future of remote workforce is going to bring. We have some special guests here from Cisco, some new faces, and some faces we've seen before on episode 1. And really, we're here to explore the intersection between technology, security, and the business with the industry's best, so that's why we brought Cisco here. For over 25 years, Carousel has been helping business and IT leaders innovate and transform business. We have specializations. We're a Cisco Gold partner. We have master collaboration, master security, master cloud. And really implementing best-in-class Cisco technologies has been a huge part of that client success. So I'd like to introduce and welcome 3 special guests that we have from Cisco today. We have Matt O'Brien, who's a Senior Director of America's Global Enterprise Security Sales. He's a 19-year Cisco veteran. He's held several leadership positions within Cisco enterprise networking, data center, and in the security organizations. And really today, he's dedicated to protecting America's largest companies from cyber threats. We also have Paul Oliver, Director of Collaboration Solutions, 25 years in the industry, joined Cisco in 2009, leads a team that's focused on Cisco's collaboration solution set and the global enterprise segment. And really, that's 500 of the largest global companies in the world. We also have Tony Morone. He's a Senior Technical Marketing Engineer in Cisco's Collaboration Technology Group. Over the past 20 years, he's researched and written many technical white papers, design guidance, and documents. These days, he specializes in cloud collaboration security for WebEx meetings and WebEx teams. He has a background in telecommunications and a Bachelor of Science from the University College in London. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for joining us today. It's great to see Paul and Maddie again.
Hi, Jason. How you doing?
We're doing well. So the last time we talked was back in April. And really, organizations were trying to starting that shift into the remote workforce. COVID had just hit. And now we're at a point, 4 months later, where cybersecurity professionals like myself are starting to really confront this new normal, right? We've noticed over the course of the last 4 months that cyber attacks have been on the rise during the quarantine. Research is showing that they're going to continue to rise. And now we're at a point where security leaders are looking at how do we modernize corporate security in a security posture that's really going to enable a remote workforce. Because from what I'm seeing, folks, I don't think this is going to change. More and more organizations are looking at how do we keep a remote workforce active. They're looking at actually taking some of their brick and mortar places and facilities and really thinking twice about whether or not they need those facilities any longer. So I really think that the future is a remote workforce. What are you seeing these days from Cisco's perspective on some of those challenges?
I'll jump in real quick. You just look at the press today and you look at what you were talking about, Jason, about things not changing, but this is going to be a part of the new normal as we go forward. Salesforce.com just announced that they're going to let their employees stay home until August of next year.
Yeah.
So we're looking at another year of this at a minimum. And we are seeing what companies did initially was a very good job of getting people home and getting them home to the tools to work, the collaboration stuff that Paul and Tony can talk about, but then they also did it securely. And now what we're seeing is customers are absolutely looking to right-size that. What's the right solution at home? And it's getting into, we'll talk about in a little while, this whole SASE approach that Gartner's talked about, which is a secure access services edge, because the edge is gone. The edge is no longer a simple building that has some brick walls and we put a firewall with a router out there. Instead, now people are everywhere and they're working everywhere. What'll be a little twist in this is that people are working at home now. There's going to be more of working at home, but also the Starbucks, which we saw a little bit before. We're going to see more of that as we go forward.
Right.
Paul, what are you and Anthony seeing, Tony seeing relative to the collab piece, which is so crucial to communications?
Well, first off, Maddie, I hope it's not a year that we're all working totally remote. I mean, I saw that Salesforce. I saw that Salesforce announcement. I'm hoping that some of us can do better than that. It's interesting. what I'm seeing from some of our largest customers is their remote meetings environment is really critical, clearly, to the way they're working. But we're almost at a point where we've all got meeting fatigue, because in order to keep the business running, we're in one meeting after the other. And so a lot of the companies I'm working with are looking at their entire collaboration sort of estate, how to secure it, but also how to reduce the number of meetings and make their people more effective by using other tools like messaging, messaging meetings, escalating to a call or to a meeting only when needed, and trying to keep the meeting length short and being sure that everyone's productive when they're in the meeting. So it's almost as if we've gone from no remote or a little remote work to a heck of a lot, and now we're going to try and give people a little more time between meetings to work on individual projects. It's one of the things I'm seeing.
Yeah, Paul, I mean, honestly, that's something that have been talking a lot with peers, right? So security leaders inevitably, because of this, are starting to get into the productivity analysis game, right? Yeah. They're bringing folks like myself into conversation. So executives within organizations are bringing security leaders in, saying, listen, how can we ensure that our workforce is not only staying secure, but productive as well? Because we're getting so much telemetry on the security team, right? So they're asking for our input and our feedback there, which is out of the normal for a security team, but it's great to be able to enable the business.
Mm-hmm. What's the feedback you're getting on the productivity, Jason, relative to, I'm seeing some different articles that people are saying productivity's up because there's no more commute hours. People can go online a lot easier at 10 o'clock at night, where some of them, as Paul said, didn't have it before. What were you seeing out of that outcome of the analysis that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, the things that I'm seeing is you're absolutely dead on, is that now folks are starting to work all hours of the day because they can, right? And at the end of the day, it's one of those situations where it's a balance. Maybe during the day, because you have children in school and you're doing some level of remote learning, or maybe your significant other isn't there to be there with the child, you may take an hour or so, but then you're working till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. Concerns I'm starting to see is burnout, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're so connected, because you're always on, because you have everything at your fingertips in your home. Folks are working more. I'm noticing that as more of the trend, right? So for me, at least with my teams, I focus on burnout, right? I want to make sure I get it. You're connected. I get it. It's easy, but take a day off, right? I mean, I have conversations with my folks. It's okay, right? It's okay. You don't have to be working 24/7.
Certainly at Cisco, we've had a kind of culture of working from home. I mean, I worked from home for 15 years. But certainly when COVID hit, what we saw was many companies starting a charge to start working from home. And that's kind of how they did that could take many forms. So it could be connecting their on-premises equipment to the home user, so VPN, mobile remote access, that kind of thing. But what we're also seeing is just a large amount of cloud, because it just makes it so much easier. Security's on by default. It really, really helps. But I take your point about the balance, though. I think pretty much everybody in the last few months is having to kind of work harder on getting that work-life balance right.
Yeah, agreed. So talk to me a little bit about, some of the challenges maybe some Cisco customers have seen out there. I know, just speaking to my peers and clients, visibility is a concern. How do we get more visibility to the endpoint? Dealing with data overload, right? So how are we handling that data overload and all that telemetry coming in? Identity is a big piece too, right? Not only user identity, but machine identity. How do we know that the right user on the right device is actually connecting in? And then the other conversations I've had with peers too is performance, right? How do you make sure while you're overlaying all that security, you're making sure that performance and end user experience is still solid, right? I mean, I know we're at the whim of local ISPs within customers, within employees' homes, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure as an IT team and a security team, user experience is solid, because that's a key component to productivity.
Yeah, I get into a couple of pieces of that, and Paul and Anthony can as well. The data overload is real. In the last 2 years, the amount of security data telemetry that's come out has doubled. That's pre-COVID, so I'd be interested to see what those numbers come out even more so.
Right.
It'll be bigger. You know, we've done some different things with our management tools to create simplification. And what we're starting to see, as much as we have a broad portfolio to provide customers, that's what they want more than secure efficacy. They want the efficacy, but they'll let a little trail off to have a simpler solution. They are absolutely pounding the door for simplification, and that's going to play into that whole SASE world of how we go to market. And you talked about a key part of that is identity. It's, are you who you say you are? Is your device a device that we trust? And then you start to look at it that way. And we've seen an incredible spike in our business relative to the Duo acquisition, which is the baseline is MFA, multi-factor authentication, and then we have some identity capability on top of that, and then management on top of that. And in Q4 alone, in the enterprise team, we saw almost a 49% increase in business. And so we've seen a huge spike, and we see that carrying into Q1 and beyond as companies shift what would be their OpEx or CapEx from an internal inside the four walls to external to the end users and what's happening with them wherever they may be.
Yeah, I've also seen a great adoption in terms of WebEx Control Hub. So for people working at home, they could be using calling, using WebEx meetings, WebEx Teams, all of those things. But with Control Hub, what you get is a single administrative platform where you can kind of view everybody. In terms of identity, you can kind of sync from your corporate directory. You can just use a directory connector. You can use Skim, a flat file. And for the authentication piece, typically it's SSO. So most enterprises are using SSO. And again, on the back end in our WebEx Cloud, you can use single sign-on and IDP such as F5 and Microsoft Azure, ADFS, Duo, for example, as well to authenticate those users. But the nice thing, it's a single pane of glass now to administer all of those users in your organization, whether they've got a phone on their desk, whether they're using meetings, or whether they're messaging with Teams, for example. So it's a really nice place to go and look at all of that information. Yeah. Plus you get the analytics as well. So you can drill down and see what's happening in a meeting real time. An admin can join a meeting live and see what's going on. So there's a lot that you can do from that single pane of glass.
So, Paul, anything you wanted to add from your perspective?
Well, this data overload issue that you mentioned, I think the more we can do as technology vendors to sort of help sift through that data and provide it in a sensible way to the right people in the IT organization and maybe the end user community, the more we can do there, clearly the better. A stat off the top of my head, I know in April, we ran more than 100 million WebEx meetings. Our WebEx platform ran more than 100 million meetings. A lot of the participants, there were sort of nearly 600 million meeting participants during that month. So a lot of those are at home or mobile. IT departments in our customers are getting questions from that huge user base saying, hey, I was on such and such a meeting and I really had trouble with the audio connection. The Control Hub management console that Tony talked about, we've put an enormous amount of effort into that Control Hub to allow IT to go back in and to say, okay, what happened in that meeting? And 9 times out of 10, in a case like that, you find that the end user strolled a long way from their wireless access point, and the wireless signal was just too weak to sustain a good sort of voice and video connectivity. I think when we start to layer in our security capability onto that sort of core meetings analytics, so we bring, we're nicely placed at Cisco to be able to bring the security data set and the collaboration data set together. Yeah. And provide a very complete picture.
And that's the key, right? It's creating the context. It's creating the context for folks who are administering the systems, for our security teams. So now you have security data and performance data that you can overlay on each other and start getting context on that.
Yeah. But on the security side, I mean, I kind of deal with cloud security kind of day in, day out. Certainly what I've seen is that with the move to working from home, it kind of changes things up in a big way. If you're kind of developing some top secret code, you're in the office, you're considered to be secure. Moving that to a home office or having a board meeting from your home office, customers are concerned about just how secure that is. So we've seen for meetings just a massive increase in the use of end-to-end encrypted meetings. So those are meetings where the voice and video is encrypted, the participants have that encryption key, but we in WebEx don't have that encryption key. So it gives them that reassurance. We've seen a massive growth in end-to-end encryption in WebEx meetings itself. But what we've also seen, what I've seen in particular, is an increasing interest from customers in just how we are securing the cloud, the applications themselves, if it's down to the devices or the applications, how we secure data at rest, data in transit, TLS, what we're storing in the cloud, how we secure that stuff in the cloud. They're all now top of mind because so many more people are working from home. It seems to be a bigger consideration these days.
Yeah, I mean, Tony, you're dead on, right? Ultimately, the struggle that we're having is we need to ensure that we're keeping a strong security posture for our employees that could be working from anywhere with any device at any point in time. I mean, that's the scenario that we're in right now, right? Because we're not 9 to 5 anymore. We just talked about that. Folks are working all different hours because they have to, because life is dictating that these days, right? They could be working from potentially anywhere, right? I mean, if a worker has to drop their child off and then jump into a coffee shop to get on Wi-Fi to make a meeting, they're going to be doing that, right? Or they're going to be doing it on the road or from anywhere they can get a Wi-Fi connection. And to be honest with you, it's a scenario where, hey, I may have to pick up my wife's laptop and jump on a meeting real quick because that's what's handy. That's what I have available. So that's the scenario that we're working in. So, I'm curious holistically.
Let's build on that point for a minute, because what's critical with that, and we saw initially some issues, is the quality of the product or the service that the customers are using. Because as people's quality drops, they're less likely to use those tools.
Sure.
Paul and Anthony live in that space every single day. So for customers, it's a price issue, no doubt, but it's also a quality of the product capability. And enterprise quality is what we're seeing, as Tony talked about with board meetings or things like that. They need that high-level security. They need that high-level quality, because otherwise it just doesn't work, and then they're stuck.
Yeah, and you want to know what? There's the law of unintended consequences too, Matty, right? Because if you have a platform that you don't have faith in, you go jump to some other shadow IT, and that creates security issues right there, right? So the last thing we want to do is have our user base on technologies that don't give them the right experience, don't give them the features, functionalities that they need to do their jobs, because that's just creating a recipe for disaster and for them to go out and find some random product to jump on to get their job done. As a security leader and a CIO, I don't want to see that happen, because that creates its own huge security gap as well, blind spots.
Sure.
Yeah, security, it has many layers as well, right? So there are the bits that you don't want to touch. It's like you want to know that you're using the strongest ciphers in TLS, that all of your data is encrypted by default if you're sending it anywhere. If you're storing information in your app, so if you're storing access tokens or messages, those need to be securely encrypted. They need to be encrypted with a master key, only accessible via the app itself. But then likewise, as an administrator, you want to control what your users do. You want to secure your meeting. So you might be wanting to lock a meeting, to enforce password access. If you're coming in from a phone, if you're coming in from a video endpoint or an application, they're password protected before you join them. If you're using the messaging app, maybe you want to police what people are putting into spaces. Are they putting confidential information into spaces? So you want to track that. Do you want to track what people can share, who can join spaces, and so on? So it's a multi-layered approach with security. There are so many things to think about, really.
Yeah, and the other side I always think about too is regulatory and compliance, right? So there's that opposite side of security, which is the GRC end, right? The audit piece. So having a platform that can meet all of your compliance and regulatory needs is a big conversation that I'm having with our customers as well, right? They want to make sure if they're moving to a cloud platform, can it sustain the controls that are in NERC or CGIS from a law enforcement perspective, right? I mean, we're looking down the barrel of CMMC now for DoD contractors, where they need to meet 800-171 from in this side of the aisle. So compliance is a big piece of that, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, certainly there's the kind of the bread and butter stuff that you must have. If you're going to be in the game of cloud, you have to have SOC 2 and ISO. So SOC 2 independently audited. So we have those in the WebEx cloud for those applications. And then there are clearly the more specialist tranches as well. So there's the healthcare environment with HIPAA, for example, which we support. We have HIPAA compliance, which protects your personal data, but also in the government and federal space, FedRAMP as well. So we have FedRAMP today for WebEx meetings. So if you're a government organization or a federal organization, you can use the WebEx Cloud for FedRAMP. And we're just about to go into what's called approval to operate, I think in the next couple of months for WebEx Teams as well. So it's something that we drive every day, day in, day out. There's a very large team within Cisco that's driving that process and also regulates it. From outside of the collaboration technology group within Cisco, there's a separate security and trust organization, and their job is to police us, in fact, to police every product to make sure that before it goes out there, you have what's called cloud approval to operate.
Outstanding. No, that's great. Again, that's hot topic in many conversations, right? So making sure that you have a partner and a manufacturer who's forward thinking like that, and making sure that their clients are staying compliant is huge. We talked about this a little bit earlier, guys, about having a level of context across your entire network, having a level of context across all of your different platforms. I will say that's where a lot of my peers are struggling, right? There's so many siloed security platforms and tools that our security teams are getting inundated from all over the place. There's no centralization. And Maddie, I think you said it earlier. Organizations are starting to weigh is the squeeze worth the juice, right? Because if you have too much data coming in and you're getting inundated and you can't bubble the right information to the top, all you're doing is getting swamped in data, and you're not being productive. You're not getting the visibility you need. So talk to me a little bit about how Cisco is kind of consolidating down these platforms and almost creating an ecosystem, right? An ecosystem across their platforms so you can bring in the right telemetry, the right context, and really having that centralized ability to manage, administer, and see what's happening within your network.
So you hit the key part right at the very, very end of that, Jason, is that it's the manage and administer. So we came out with a tool a year ago this past November, so almost 2 years now, called CTF, Cisco Threat Response. And that's a tool that takes Cisco feeds, but also can take some third-party feeds as well that are created, and allow the customer within a period of a couple of minutes, about 5 minutes, to look across their entire infrastructure to see, all right, is this threat a problem for us? Has it breached our environment? So they're driving into work, they hear about, or they're walking up the stairs now from the first floor to go to the second floor office in their house, and they hear about a URL that's bad or threats coming from a particular place. They can quickly search for that. Where before they had to go to 6 or 7 different consoles and hope that they got it. So that's a foundational piece that brings it together. And then if we look at the other piece, we've now put together this offering called SecureX. And both of these are part of the portfolio of security that we offer automatically. And it's not a SIM. A SIM is a correlation of all the data that a customer has, and then what do you do with it? The SecureX takes that and expands it even further, pulls off a CTR and some other capabilities, and it gives them an easier management platform. And it's evolving each and every day as we add the third-party pieces as well. So it allows us to have the broad portfolio that customers need that really talks to the integration of just the use of the products, and then the management tools on top of it. The BU for us has really stepped up over the last 2 years and really delivered, and we'll see the huge uptake. We're probably close to 9,000 customers, large and above, enterprise and above for CTR and SecureX. We're moving really fast on that because that came out at the end of June. And so that's moving well quick for us as well.
Yeah, that announcement was right around Cisco Live, wasn't it? Isn't that kind of
exactly
when they were?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, can you
GA
take
was
a little?
End of June.
Yeah, can you take a little bit deeper dive into SecureX for me? I mean, talk about a little bit, about some of the feeds you can pull, some of the visibility that security teams can gather out of that, the context that they can gather out of it. Let's try, if you can, drive maybe one layer deeper on that.
Yeah, so what you're going to be able to pull off of is all the Cisco security products you have. You're also going to be able to pull from the EN management tools that you have. DNA is a Cisco management tool that we have, so you can pull from there. You'll be able to pull from some of the collaboration management tools that you have. And with that, we're also bringing it, or include CTR by default that I mentioned earlier. And then you'll also have the capability to pull in some third parties, like Splunk as a SIM. So if you have Splunk, you can gather some key parts of that data that you want and populate it, so now you have a simplified approach. Because if we look at the breaches that have occurred over the last couple of years, almost all of them, the alarms came. So the customer was notified of the issue. The challenge was they're getting so many alarms that got lost in the whole pile. And so the bad guys, we're still in the same world of the bad guys only have to be right once, but the good guys have to be right every single time. And so that's a little bit of a deeper dive into the SecureX capabilities that it's going to go wider for you and bring it to a simpler platform to research beyond the threat hunt.
I'm definitely interested in that. You know, it's one of those scenarios that I've been keeping an eyeball on it since the announcement, and I'm very interested to get under the covers there. So that's why I asked for a little bit deeper dive. That was a little selfish on my part, right? Because I want to learn a little bit more about it.
We'll get it in your lab at home so you can play around with it. We'll get it for your team as well.
I love it. So guys, do you have any? Let's talk about Cisco client side. Again, you don't have to name any names, but can you talk about the way some clients have tackled remote workforce? And when I say that, I mean at scale, right? I mean the biggest hurdle that we're having is how do we tackle remote workforce security at scale? What are they putting in for this ecosystem of tools, right? So when we take a look at the Cisco portfolio, where are you starting to see customers focus on what they want to achieve, what tool sets they're using, and how they're bringing it all together to be able to secure that remote workforce at scale?
I'd say, Jason, that you got to think about the problem from a platform perspective, and clearly what we're doing with our WebEx platform is giving you a very secure core to build around. So, we've got customers with 200,000 plus employees around the globe, all heavily dependent on WebEx right now, and they like the security that's built in from the ground up, end-to-end encryption that Tony talked about, the compliance features that we've built around that tool, the ability to potentially put key management servers in local countries around the world to satisfy the requirements in the locale. So that WebEx platform becomes absolutely central to all of remote communication. But around that, you have to care about things like identity. And like all of the other tools we've been talking about on this call, Maddie, we're inside of Cisco, we're trying to get our security team and our collaboration teams to work more closely together. They actually report up into the same applications leader now, G2 Patel. And so, we're really trying to think of this as a combined portfolio. Maddie, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you, Paul. Bring them together as crews, because at the end of the day, the customers want to buy a solution, or as Paul said, a platform. Same type of thing. What we're also seeing, though, Jason, as a focus is, as much as people are home working with their laptops, they have a VPN, customers are also starting to say, all right, what's the better model? And we may have a three-tier model where certain people, as Tony talked about, maybe board of directors, executives, may have one solution set. The second tier might be a little bit less advanced, and the third tier may be straight VPN from anywhere type of capability. And so we're seeing a lot more of that. And with that is the request that they're looking for somebody to take all of it, not piece parts of it. Right. So from a managed offering. So we come in with a Meraki, which is a SaaS-based solution. We have security built into it, as Paul said. We layer the WebEx, the collaboration piece of it. Now they have everything in a tool set, some cloud, some premise-based, and then from there they want somebody else to manage it. So they don't want to take that initial call, hey, I can't get in. Well, it's your Wi-Fi. They don't want to deal with that. And if it is the equipment, the Meraki piece that's at home, they want the vendor, and we can do this, is provide them an image box and just send it out to you at home. You replace it out. We help them do that over the phone, and they're back up and running. The customer wants to take the tier 2, so they have somebody else offloading and taking those problems off their back. So we're seeing a huge rise in that, especially particularly in the finance industry. We're seeing a significant rise in that.
Yeah. How about, I mean, you had talked about it earlier, going to more of that SASE model, right? So with that, I've been involved in conversations around, how relevant is VPN these days? A lot of organizations are 100% cloud-based, right? All of their applications are cloud. They may be on WebEx collaboration. So they're cloud-based, and you start to weigh, do we need VPN? Do you need to get to local resources? And now the conversations around software-defined perimeter, right? And talking to that level, and then endpoint protection as well.
I mean, it's a good point. I mean, I think there are multiple ways that you can get to the cloud, or you can get to your premises collaboration services. So if you're using Jabber, you could be using MRA. I mean, you could use a VPN from your desktop and go directly into the network itself. What we've started to see customers doing right now, though, is rather than just having a VPN from their kind of work PC at home, going all the way into a VPN concentrator, and then kind of hairpinning from there through a proxy and a firewall to go back out over the internet or over a direct point-to-point connection to WebEx. What we're starting to see customers do is to say, well, actually, for the media streams from these devices, which could be for video in 1 or more meg, they don't want to funnel all of that video traffic. It is encrypted. They don't want to funnel it all the way through their VPN concentrator to traverse their internal network just to go back out again. So what they're doing is doing a split tunnel approach, whereby if you're going to WebEx meetings, for example, you'll set it up so that all of the media goes directly to the WebEx cloud. It doesn't kind of hairpin through your enterprise network. It just reduces bottlenecks in the network. So that's one thing that we're seeing a lot of people starting to do.
And we have seen that, Tony, in some of our biggest WebEx customers when the use of WebEx ramped up, in North America and in Europe because of the COVID pandemic in the sort of February timeframe. A lot of our customers did have all of their WebEx traffic riding VPN. To Tony's point, to me, Jason, I don't think there's any point in doing that. This is encrypted traffic. WebEx has its own security methods. So over the course of sort of February, March, a lot of those customers implemented split tunneling, pulled that media out of the VPN, and were therefore able to take more non-video, non-voice traffic capacity over their VPN. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we build our collaboration portfolios so that it's secure without requiring a VPN, but I would say 9 of 10 of the customers I work with, there are key business applications that are in the corporate data center still today. Even though there's a lot of stuff in the cloud, there are still some absolutely key applications that are on-prem, and VPN is highly appropriate in order to get access to those. So I don't see VPN going away anytime soon. Does anyone disagree?
No, I completely agree. But, I mentioned it because I see, the amount of VPN users slimming down, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you may have certain business units that require VPN access to your network because of on-prem resources, but you could have entire business units who never fire up a VPN all day, every day. They just don't need it, right? Because every tool they have is cloud-based. And it's just not a necessity. So I'm seeing that slim down. But, it's interesting, the conversation that you had, right? Because in the beginning of the segment, we talked about how security leaders need to kind of shift their process and how they're thinking for this new normal, right? And shift it to a point where now you're starting to see progress in technology to allow security leaders to say, you know what? I'm okay with split tunnel, but I'm okay with split tunnel because you have protections on the back end, like you just talked about, where a year or two ago, split tunnel may have been off limits, right?
I mean, certainly we had those conversations when we had the first lockdown, a massive drive to move people to work from home. And we'd talk to banks and they'd say, we want all 90,000 of our employees working from home by the end of next week.
Right.
We'd said, well, here are your options. You can go VPN or MRA, but how many of those boxes do you have? because you're going to need to stack them up and you're going to need to buy them now and get the people to do it. Or you could go direct. You could split the tunnel, just go direct with that stuff. And so it's a simple kind of economic argument to say, well, look, this is secure in its own right. It's encrypted signaling, encrypted media. So why do you need to go through your enterprise to get to WebEx? Just go direct, so it works.
Yep. No, that makes total sense. But again, I mean, you take a look at it where, you look at it from a fiscal perspective, but overlay that with the confidence in the security, it's a no-brainer, right? When you start having that conversation. So that makes total sense. So
you can even lay into that, Jason, what we talked about on the first podcast we did is, do we even need firewalls then? The premise-based ones.
Right.
Virtual, it's the same concept. I do think what's going to shift, and it's hard to put a timeline on, customers rolled everybody out with VPN, very effective, powerful tool. It worked. Don't change that. But now as they look at this new model of, all right, how we're going to replace it, and if they go the SASE route, which I believe they are, a greater emphasis on identity, they're going to be going direct more as more cloud solutions, which are already very proliferated, continue. Then after that gets out and settles, and they look at the utilization of the VPN, which is at least a year, if not 2 years away, they're going to start to say, do we really need it? No, but let's keep it because we own it, we bought it, we paid for it. It's a layer of security we'll keep, but we won't enhance it, we won't build it out. And that's probably 2+ years away, maybe 3, especially when you talk about the enterprise accounts, because they have that comfort level that they know how it works, and it's been very valuable for them.
Absolutely. No, 100% agreed. And actually, that's a great segue to the conversation I wanted to have about, what's really the future from Cisco's perspective, right? Let's talk about what the next year or so is going to bring, because again, ultimately, I don't see remote workforce going away. I see it having a very large presence in the future of all of our work. More than it was before. I honestly feel like COVID kind of fast-tracked a lot of our digital transformation, from what, executives may have had in a 2-year plan to a 6-month plan. So a lot of that has been put into 5th gear, and we're going fast and furious now. So talk to me a little bit about the future of what Cisco's bringing to the table for this secure remote workforce.
A couple of things from my side. Certainly, we've been doing a lot already. So things like WebRTC, for example, we support WebRTC in the WebEx web app and the Teams web app. We also support it on devices as well. So if you call into a Microsoft meeting, you can call in using WebRTC.
And Tony, just to jump in on that, that's really, I think we may have talked about this, Jason, in the first podcast as well. Cisco's involvement in WebRTC, helping define the standards, as sort of given us a real strength there, I feel. And I'm working personally with a number of big healthcare providers at the moment that, Tony, they're delivering telehealth. HIPAA is a concern. Ease of use is a massive concern. They have an EMR, but potentially Epic, as the core to the way they organize their healthcare service. And inside of that EMR, they want to offer telehealth process capability. The doctors can be on a really nice fit-for-purpose video device, but the patient, you can't control what the patient is calling in on, and you don't want to have to distribute an app. Even something like MyChart, the Epic app, you can't guarantee that the patient has access to that, can remember their password, has it properly configured. So WebRTC is proving a hugely powerful tool for us there, because we're just pushing out of the EMR a URL, click that URL, and at 2:00 in the afternoon, and you'll be connected to your doctor in a health visit. So this idea of appless connectivity to great voice and video experience is really important. And WebRTC, Tony's doing, is the way I'm seeing a lot of our customers want to go.
Yeah, and by the way, you're getting the convenience of the feature functionality, but you're getting the security to a level where you're protecting, health information. So, I mean, that combination is definitely something that is a lethal combination. I mean, that's what we want from a security team's perspective.
Yeah, Tony, sorry, I know I interrupted your flow there, but you mentioned WebRTC, and just seeing more and more uptake of that technology.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to add to that really was just that we're kind of looking at that today. We're certainly, we're heavily involved with the IETF. Cisco as an organization believes in standards and trying to get interoperability between these products. So there's a lot that we're doing with them, right, with the WebRTC folks right now. We're looking at how we kind of can extend things like end-to-end encryption as a more standards-based approach. So we've had end-to-end encryption meetings for 10 years, more than 10 years. We've had end-to-end encryption for messaging with Teams for 5 or 6 years. We're kind of looking at that whole piece right now. We're kind of working with some standards that we've got in the IETF to look at where we're going to go going forward. So what we want to do is to really make the overall offer for WebEx to be very secure by standard. Can we offer end-to-end encryption across the board, the same form of end-to-end encryption and the same form of key management, whether you're using media or whether you're using messaging? So it's something that we're delving into, and we're kind of looking into next year right now to see what we can do. Can we make this process of giving people confidentiality and security, that real privacy that they need, essentially irrespective of what platform they're using? So they could be using WebEx, but like you said, they're using a web browser and coming in a web browser. Could they also join an end-to-end encrypted call? And that's our kind of goal. That's where we're looking to get to. It's kind of starting off right now, but we're trying to drive some of that.
Yeah. Maddie, how about from the security team's perspective? Outside of that collaboration bubble, what's some of the future of Cisco security?
It's streamlined with what we've been doing for the last 2+ years. It's all wrapped around what the customers want, which is simplification. And the way to provide that is through the tools that we provide. We talk about CTR and Secure as examples, but also the integration of that. And Tony's done a great job talking about the integration of security, end-to-end encryption in WebEx Teams as an example. That's the road we've been going down, and it's accelerated as we start to see things like CTR, SecureX, other capabilities come to the surface. So as we bring in new capabilities, new products, we start latching them into it and make it that much easier with third-party integrations. It's an open approach. Yep.
Outstanding. All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you jumping on podcast number 4. It's great to see you guys coming back, both Paul and Maddie from episode 1. For our listeners, if you want to see this type of content, go to carouselindustries.com/events, and you can see our always on podcast, virtual seminars, pizza casts, etc. Again, gentlemen, thanks so much for your time.